We're coming to you live and direct from the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar, part of the historic Patterson Building in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. This is another hour of the Legislature Today radio show. This is our inaugural week. It's a brand new week, and we're looking forward to Wednesdays because it is an evening presented by the University of Mary, America's leadership university. And we have a very special guest that'll be joining Dale in just a moment. We want to remind you that you're always invited to join us at the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar. And we have listeners all throughout North Dakota, and we appreciate that very much. But if you're in the capital city, come on down and enjoy yourself at this historic, wonderful restaurant. You're not going to find better beef anywhere. And by the way, Wednesday nights is Wine Down Wednesday, which means you get a half-price bottle of wine. I'm sorry, Dale?
You just mentioned it. I was going to say you're really overlooking something here, and you just mentioned it. You might mention it again for the benefit of our listeners.
That it's Wine Down Wednesday.
Yes.
That wine would be spelled W-I-N-E, Dale.
Exactly.
As a good journalist. And they have bottles of wine for half price.
See, this is what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
This is an interesting idea.
This voice you're hearing.
Idea. Something that should be encouraged.
Yes, this voice you're hearing, ladies and gentlemen, is the managing editor of Great Plains News, and we encourage you to check out the coverage of the North Dakota Legislative Session as well as the Legislature Today radio show at the GreatPlainsNews.com website. That's GreatPlainsNews.com. You can also submit your questions for our guest. Quick recap overview of today's legislative action, Dale, at the legislature.
Well, the governor has a very expensive and complex, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, an expensive and complex new method for distributing aid to education. And the House, this bill that implements this new formula is in the House, and the House committees, specifically the House Education and the House Appropriations Committee, are trying to get their collective brains around the implications of this formula. How much is it going to cost? How is it going to affect their school district? And this is as personal as it gets with members of the legislature, because I think it's fair to say they're more concerned about their local public schools than they are about anything.
How would it be different than we do education funding now in a nutshell?
Well, essentially, for one thing, it's a lot more. I mean, you're talking about almost a doubling of spending on state aid to local education. And there are restrictions on how much school districts can raise their property taxes without a vote of their patrons. And there is the formula itself, it's complicated, but it's going to be adjusted somewhat in terms of the amounts of money that one gets for certain characteristics of a school, how large it is, how many special education students do they have, that kind of thing. And it's the sticking point here is going to be, and this is very preliminary because I frankly don't understand all the ins and outs of the formula myself, but one of the early concerns that's being raised is what are the effects on the small schools, because this formula, you'll do very well if you are a school administrator under this formula if you have a lot of students and if you're growing. If you have very few students and you're shrinking, then you're not doing so well.
How would it impact the property tax relief mechanism now, where the dollars go from the state to offset property taxes at the local level?
Well, essentially, this property tax money, the money that has been used to pay subsidies for property taxes in local districts, it's going to go into this formula. Essentially, what we're doing here is taking the money for property tax relief and the money that is normally spent on schools, we're lumping it together and we're saying, okay, this is the amount of money that one needs in order to provide an adequate education for students in North Dakota. And essentially what you're doing is you're basing state spending not on property tax relief, but on education adequacy. I mean, I'm trying to think of a better word than adequacy, but that's the word that's used. And so the state government that's the business they should be in, and that's the business the state constitution says they should be in, is promoting a free system of public schools. There's nothing in the Constitution about saying state government should support local property taxes. Now, the result is pretty much the same in terms of each district, in terms of the money they get for property tax subsidy. But I think that what we're doing here is we're saying to the schools, we, the state government, will provide most of the money that you need in order to provide the sort of instruction to your students that they should expect and that their parents should expect. In exchange, you're going to limit your property taxes, and you're not going to be able to raise them unless you have the consent of your voters. It's a different emphasis, but
it's fair to say this is going to be a major issue throughout this entire session.
Yes,
right?
I mean, because as I say, the legislators care as much about their school district, their local schools, as they do about anything, and so they watch this sort of thing like a hawk. They want to know how much money is my school going to get, and there's nothing more intense than school finance, and this is a major school finance initiative.
One final question before we go to our guest for the hour. Sustainability is always a big deal there. As far as, you mentioned the price tag is hefty.
Yes.
Are we going to be hearing that concern and that criticism from?
We certainly are. And the thing is that sustainability has almost become like the boy who cried wolf in the legislature, because I've been hearing this, and frankly, I've believed it for a long time. I mean, oh man, we can't jack up spending that much because we'll never be able to sustain it. And then it does come. And I mean, in the 90s.
Thank the good Lord for ag and energy.
In the 90s, oh, we can't do this, can't sustain it. You heard this over and over again, and it's a legitimate argument, but it's never come true. I mean, I'm sure that the sums of money we're talking about, that's going to spark that kind of argument again, or that kind of debate, and it's a legitimate debate to have. But when you are spending as much money as the governor's budget proposes to spend, and you still have $1 jillion in reserve, I mean, how big a concern is sustainability going to be, especially when it looks like oil prices are going to be staying fairly high for forever? I mean, not forever, but it does seem like oil prices are going to be staying strong, and that development in North Dakota, oil development, is going to continue apace.
Well, given the level of capital investment going on, these companies are looking out 20, 30 years. They obviously see enough of a it's a resource-based play more so than the 80s was a price-based play. So that's obviously a considerable game changer.
Well, see, the thing is that to me this is like a hallucination, because when I came to North Dakota in the mid-80s, the economy was bad. And the legislature struggled to, raise tuition, raise spending on education by $15, $20 million. Now that's just chump change. That's what falls out of the collective pocket when someone walks down the hallway.
It's
a bizarre world.
It is a very different time. Well, anyway, good recap on an important issue we'll be hearing lots more about throughout the entire legislative session. We have an incredible leader with us for the remainder of the hour, and I am so looking forward to this conversation between our host, the managing editor for Great Plains News, Dale Wetzel, and our special guest, the president of America's Leadership University, Monsignor Jim Shea. So, Monsignor, great to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
And I'm going to be an observer and maybe chime in a little later on, because I want to see the master.
Scott is going to chime in, I'm sure, because frankly, Scott he's Catholic enough for the three. He's Catholic enough to cover me and Gary Amoneth and yourself. Scott is the ultimate Catholic.
Wow.
And here he is in the presence of greatness.
Exactly.
Monsignor James Patrick Shea. Monsignor, first of all, tell us, what does Monsignor mean?
Well, it's an honorary title which is bestowed by the Pope at the request usually of the local bishop, and it's an honorary title. A Monsignor is a priest like any other priest.
It doesn't mean I'm thinking, pardon me, but I'm thinking like the Army is. Does this mean you're a sergeant and everyone else is a private, or what does it mean?
I don't think it's not a matter of rank. It really is just an honorary title.
Okay.
It's harder to spell than father.
Tell us about the university that you're the president of. How many students do you have?
I'm grateful for that. Yeah, the University of Mary has about 3,200 students now. We were founded in 1959 as Mary College. Our first majors were education and nursing. And in fact, there's a certain sense in which we were an outgrowth of the St. Alexius School of Nursing, which had been founded in 1915. But we've grown rapidly since then. Of course, our main campus is 6 miles south of Bismarck, just out by the airport, which is convenient when you travel as much as I do. And then we have satellite campuses in downtown Bismarck and Fargo, out in Billings, where we'll be launching Montana's first occupational therapy program this year. We're in Alexandria, Minnesota, Kansas City, Missouri, Fort Riley, Kansas. We're down in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have a campus in Rome, Italy. In addition to that, we have a huge online presence as well. So when I say 3,200 students, about 1,900 of those, 1,900 of those are traditional students on our main campus, and the others are adults usually who are pursuing master's degrees with us, working professionals, people doing degree completion programs, and then people who are online from all over the world.
What are your biggest programs, your most popular ones?
Well, the most intensive programs are our programs in the health sciences. So that's physical therapy, our doctorate in physical therapy. That's our only doctorate right now, although we're launching 2 more doctorates in the coming year or 2. So we'll have a doctorate in education and a doctorate in nursing in the very near future. But our doctorate in physical therapy right now is sort of a flagship program for us. We've got about 300 people on the waiting list to get into that program.
What's the job market for physical therapists?
It's
right
incredible.
now?
That's one of the reasons. And in fact, in all the health sciences, which are booming. So that includes our programs in occupational therapy, nursing, athletic training, exercise science, pre-med. All of those different programs are really booming for us. In addition to that, so that's our School of Health Sciences. We've got a School of Education, which trains some of the best teachers around, School of Education and Behavioral Sciences, which also has like our criminal justice program and our social work program. We've got a School of Business, the Gary Tharaldson School of Business, which does fantastic work. And then there's a School of Arts and Sciences, which provides sort of the core courses that all of our students take. And that's where sort of the leadership, ethics, all of those, philosophy, theology, English, how to write, how to speak, how to be a good citizen. Our course on responsible citizenship is in that school, and so we've got all of that.
If you're in to study for physical therapy, do you need to, at the University of Mary, need to take courses in religion? Or
well, no.
What are the prerequisites?
Yeah, no, right. So that depends on whether you've come all the way through the University of Mary or whether you transfer in at the beginning.
Okay.
And so students, of course, who are University of Mary students who go directly into so lots of freshmen come to us with the intention of becoming a physical therapist. And they have a better chance, in a certain sense, of getting into our program, which is so competitive, if they come at the beginning. Then they receive all of those courses. At the doctoral level, if they're transferring in from other places, then they wouldn't they wouldn't take a religion course per se, but they would certainly receive a fine ethical foundation to the academic program.
Where do your students come from geographically?
Well, you know, we serve heavily this region, and so North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota, Minnesota. But in recent years, we've been branching out quite a bit. That's partly because of the popularity of health sciences programs, partly because we went in 2006 NCAA Division II athletics, meaning that at any given time there are 400 student athletes on our campus, and many of those come to us from Houston, from Nevada, from California, from all over the place. And then we're becoming a real mecca. To mix my
I was going to say
we're becoming a real mecca for serious Catholic students from throughout the country. Now, of course, we have a real diverse student body. We serve Catholics and Lutherans and people of all faiths on our campus, but we really aren't afraid of our identity as a Christian Catholic Benedictine institution, and people know that, and that's beginning to turn heads in the wide world. And so it's an amazing thing. I walk around and I see students who have come to us because we're the nation's most affordable serious Catholic university. I see students who come to us from all over the place, and you know what? They're going to stay right here in North Dakota and contribute to the workforce and the common good of this region.
I was interested, you mentioned Fort Riley, Kansas, you mentioned Missouri, and you pronounced it Missouri, which I thought was fascinating because that is the proper pronunciation, being from Missouri, of course.
I was going to say, spoken like a native.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Rome. Talk about, I'd like to hear about the program in Rome.
I love to talk about
Fort Riley, Missouri, Rome.
Sure.
What doesn't belong in that group?
Before you answer that question, the reason he's asking this is he's gunning for a live
wants to-
broadcast
yeah,
from
he wants to go
Legislature Today from
broadcast
Rome.
there, right?
After the session, right, Dale?
I
Yeah.
understand they have a very interesting government in Italy.
Oh my
so-
goodness! Well, they start a new one every couple weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we could broadcast about lots of stuff if we went over there. The Italian government makes the North Dakota legislature look really sleepy. It's really incredible. But no, we have a campus in Rome. It's in its third year of operation, and it's a very vibrant place for our students. So our students go over there typically their sophomore year. And that sophomore year is a real tender time in higher education. Any college president, any director of enrollment, or any sort of academic officer at a college or university will tell you that sophomore year is a real important time in a student's development and growth, because it's at that point where, they've been in their chosen academic program for a little while. They're starting, many of them, to wonder, well, am I doing the right thing? Am I where I'm supposed to be? The original sort of enthusiasm for studying and for college has sort of waned a little bit, and they're in a place where they're asking pretty significant questions. And that's the point where we want our students, and they're not so deep into their academic program that they don't still have chances or choices. So that's the point where we send our students over, and they go over there and they spend a semester, or some of them a 5-week program. We have a program in May that's just 5 weeks long. They spend a semester or 5 weeks studying in Rome. We have classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Thursday noon we cut them loose. And they travel all over from Thursday noon until Sunday night. Our students are all over the map. They go up to Berlin, they go over to Paris, they go to climb mountains in Greece. They're up in England or Ireland. They go and they travel, and that's a classroom too. And so we want them. We have the academic days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have classes in the morning, and then the afternoons are free to explore Rome, and then the weekends generally are free to explore Europe. And we expect them to go out. And it's an amazing thing. The room, board, and tuition are the same in Rome as they are in Bismarck.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
You pay the same amount as you would if you were.
You pay the exact
staying in
same
North
amount.
Dakota.
You need to buy a plane ticket, but your financial aid goes with you for the university and everything. And it's an amazing thing. So we're able to teach some tremendous courses over there. We do a fantastic art course, which really opens the students' eyes to all sorts of things. And so they spend 10 days in Paris. There's a friend of mine who teaches at the Louvre, and she comes down to Rome and takes them around for 10 days in Rome. They have a private tour of the Sistine Chapel, and then she takes them up to Paris for 10 days, and she shows them the Louvre. She takes them to Versailles. She shows them the Musée d'Orsay. They go to the Sainte-Chapelle. They go through Notre Dame. It's amazing. We have a course there called Benedict Yesterday and Today, which is about the whole history of monasticism. It tells the story of Saint Benedict, the foundation of the monasteries, how civilization and really Western culture was preserved through the really tumultuous years in the fall of the Roman Empire into the Middle Ages, the development of the first universities, the great strands of thought which have brought us this sort of modern enterprise of free thought and exchanging of ideas and everything that we're able to enjoy today. And we explore the foundations of that. They take a very strong ethics course in Rome. They study a little bit of Italian. It's really an enriching experience. And I'll tell you, just between the three of us, there's a...
And everyone else.
It's actually, it's a little bit of a trick. The students go over there wanting to see the Colosseum. That's why they go. And they want an experience. They want to go. They want an experience. They're from Beulah, and they want to go see the world. They're from Hettinger. They're from Hazleton, like I am. And they want to go see the world. And they see the Colosseum. But they also discover other things. They begin to see the world in a different way. They pray at the tombs of the martyrs. They're able to wander through the cobblestones. They see tremendous churches. They're able to stand in the ruins of the Roman Forum and see where the Senate met, where the speeches of Julius Caesar and Cicero took place. They are able to see the Pope up close and personal, and then they're able to and they see not just the Colosseum, they begin to see the world and their lives and those who are dear to them, their families, their friends, and the place that they're from in a different way. And they come back, and even the students who don't go to Rome experience the real wonder of the students because of that cross-pollination when they come back. And they find a place like North Dakota again when they come back for the first time.
When you say a different way, what different way?
Well, of course, to come back from an experience like that, especially if it's a well-constructed experience where the students are really pushed to the limits of their comfort as Americans, to where they're really beginning to rethink some of the things that they take for granted every day, in which they have to experience what it means to live in a place where it's kind of harder to get around, where you don't know the language, where what it means to rely on other people. Because they're like, I grew up in a family of 8 kids, but most of these kids don't come from a family like that. And all of a sudden, it's kind of them against the world over there. They come back with a deeply rich understanding of community, with a much deeper and broader understanding of culture, of what it means to contribute to the common good. And then they're able to see the whole trajectory of history in a better way, in a clearer way. It's a wonderfully enriching experience. So it's a trap. Not a trap, a trick. They go over to see the Colosseum, and they come back completely different. They don't expect that.
You said you were from Hazen and
Hazleton.
Hazen?
Hazleton.
Hazleton.
Yeah,
I beg
right.
your pardon. I
No,
beg
that's
your
all
pardon.
right. Go Tigers.
We're coming up to a break here, but once we get on the other side of the break, to use Scott's terminology, we're going to ask you about how you came up, how you became a priest, something
Sure.
about your background. We're speaking to Monsignor Shea, who is the president of the University of Mary, America's leadership university, and one of the sponsors of our show. Welcome, Monsignor Shea, and I'm sure that folks who are listening, I mean, he's just like it in person, what he sounds like on the radio. He's
Dynamic leader.
He's
Dynamic
dynamic.
leader. He sure is.
I'm just kind of trying to stand upright here.
We'll take a short break. We'll come back with more. We're live at the Peacock Alley. All of us have been gripped with what happened in Newtown, Connecticut, and Sandy Hook Elementary School. People who struggle with their faith sometimes see events like that and say, how could a God let that happen? How could a God let, first grade children be murdered? This awful evil that befell really an American tragedy with a gunman at a school, just something that's completely unthought of. What do you say to somebody that sees that and then, because of it, struggles with their faith?
Well, I think an event like that causes all of us to step back and to struggle, not simply with our faith, but not simply with our faith in God, but with our faith in the human person, to understand that another human being, that something could happen in him that would cause this to happen, convinces us of the reality of evil in a very real way. And so you remember that book by William Peter Blatty, The Exorcist, which came out and then was made into this great movie. One of the primary characters in this movie doesn't believe in God, and at the end of the book, I don't know if this is in the movie or not, the priest who's there asks her, "Are you still an atheist?" And she said, "Well, at least I believe in the devil." In other words, there are two sides of that coin. Human free will brings tremendous suffering and disaster into the world, and that God would allow human beings to be free to do evil. The flip side of that is that free choice allows us to love. So there's no easy explanation for what happened there, for any human suffering or cruelty. But God isn't the obstacle to human happiness, but really the beginning of the answer. In fact, the final answer.
Do we have a cultural problem in the country? I mean, is the Newtown or a Columbine, or pick the ones where you just grab the headlines and it sets you back? Is that a result of a cultural problem? Why is it happening? Or is it any different than King Herod and massacres, thousands of years ago?
Well, I think that violence is something which always touches the human spirit, and that people need to be healed of, and cultures need to be healed of. Violence, if you look through history, violence manifests itself in different cultures in different ways. And when we think about our historical heritage, in other words, what we're handing on to generations that come after us, there are some areas of tremendous violence. And we consider ourselves to be such enlightened people. And yet certain things happen which are really appalling. And those are areas where we really need to take stock as a society, examine our consciences, and purge ourselves.
I want to ask one final question, and I'm going to give it back to Dale for the final 5 minutes here. A priest friend of mine who married Maria and I and baptized our kids, a fellow by the name of Father William Sherman, who I don't think would mind.
We publish his books.
Yeah,
the University of Mary Press publishes Father Sherman's books.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great author. He's written a lot of neat stories.
Yeah.
In the middle of the child abuse scandal, he told me a story about how we'd go into a cafe, he'd take his collar off. Because unfortunately, in the middle of that, people were looking poorly upon priests, and boy, it broke my heart when I heard that story. As Dale mentioned earlier, as a proud Catholic, to think, my gosh, you're someone that with lifelong service, incredible, and because of 1/2 of 1% of priests making poor decisions and it maybe being handled poorly by leadership and everything else, things we could rightly criticize, it somehow tarnishes this enormous generational good that the Catholic Church does. How frustrating is that for you and for your fellow priests?
Well, I was ordained in 2002, which was sort of the epicenter of this wave of scandal. I think people hold priests to a high standard, and I think they should. And I think that some things happen in the church which the church needs to be purified of too. And so there's a frustration, but I think that the example that we give is tremendously important. And I think it's important for us to understand that the choices that are made ripple out to other people. So obviously the best response to that is to point to people like the sisters who founded the University of Mary, who came out to Dakota Territory in 1878 and who poured out their lives in service to the people of this prairie. Or priests who I think many of us have met who are generous, tremendous, or ministers in the Lutheran Church or a Methodist. There are lots of people of faith who are laboring on the prairies of North Dakota, setting their own needs and their own desires aside so that they can live in small towns, so that they can help people there with their struggles. People up in Stanley need witnesses of the gospel. And those are the types of answers to that scandal.
Do you think that there's not enough attention paid to the private college sector in the legislature? I mean, most of the emphasis is on the public university system.
And that's partly rightly how it should be. I mean, the taxpayer money supports and the Constitution mandates the presence of public higher education in the state of North Dakota. We're certainly grateful for what support we do receive, and it could be that at certain times we're undervalued. It could be that the contribution that a place like Jamestown College or the university makes isn't properly realized.
How do you think it could be better realized?
Well, I think we have the opportunity constantly to talk to legislators. We certainly have we've spoken with the governor about that. The governor was just on our campus in early December, and we had a chance to speak with him a little bit. I think that it's a matter of awareness. I think that in addition to that, our graduates are the best people who bring the University of Mary message forward.
What do you like most about being the president of a university?
Well, I think, Dale, more than anything, it's the chance to serve the noble cause of the formation and education of young people. We're really grateful for that.
What do you do to teach the students that you have? Do you try to... I'll tell you what do you do for fun?
In 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds
What
or
I
less.
do for fun, I come on radio shows and I forget what bills we're supporting.
That's all right. You play golf? Do you play baseball?
No, I'm a terrible golfer.
Well, everyone is.
I read books. I go and I spend time with my family. I have a great time doing all of that.
Yeah, Scott asked me the other day, what do you do for fun? And basically I told him I'm the most boring person in the world. I read books.
There's nothing boring about the last hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time. Monsignor James Patrick Shea, the president of the University of Mary. Thank you, Monsignor.
Looking forward to many more conversations just like this all throughout the Legislature Today radio show. The University of Mary, America's leadership university, our sponsor Wednesday nights on the Legislature Today radio show. 550 K-Fire, AM 1100 The Flag, AM 1090 The Flag in the Bakken. Thanks for listening.